Story title: Poor cleaner shocked everyone when she saved the CEO with sign language. What happened next? Before the horns began blaring on Ikorodu Road, before hawkers lifted trays of plantain chips and shouted for customers, before the sun even stretched its golden fingers across the Lego skyline, Ruth was already sweeping the marble floor of Eco Towers. Her broom scratched softly against the tiles. The scent of disinfectant stung her nose. Above her, the air conditioning hummed, but sweat still dampened her back. She wore the same faded wrapper her mother once tied around her waist, now frayed at the edges, and with every stroke of the broom she whispered to herself, "One day, Ruth, you will not be invisible." But invisible was all she was. To the executives in their polished suits, she was just another cleaner, a shadow in the corners of their boardrooms. None of them knew her story, nor the weight she carried in silence. That morning, upstairs on the top floor, Julian Cole, the CEO of the multinational firm that owned the building, was pacing. In less than an hour, he had a critical meeting with a deaf international investor. The interpreter he had booked had just canceled, sick and stuck at home. Panic swelled in his chest. Billions hung in the balance, and without interpretation, the deal was as good as dead. Find someone, anyone. Julian barked at his assistant, but no one came forward. Fear rippled across the office, and at that very moment, Ruth's broom froze mid-sweep. Her heart raced. For years she had carried in her hands a secret she could sign. Not from books or classrooms, but from survival, from speaking with her little brother Toby, who was born deaf. Slowly, she stepped closer, voice trembling but steady. "Sir, I can do it." The room went silent. Executives turned, some smirking, some frowning. A cleaner? An interpreter? Julian's eyes narrowed in disbelief. "This is not the time for jokes," he snapped. But Ruth's chin lifted. "I can do it, sir." Julian's chest rose and fell. The clock was ticking. With no choice left, he nodded. "Fine. Try. If you fail, you walk out." Minutes later, in the glass-walled boardroom overlooking Lagos Island, Ruth stood with trembling hands. The investor signed quickly, words flowing in silence. Ruth's fingers moved, hesitant at first, then steady, translating with clarity born not of training but of love. She spoke the investor's words in a soft voice, then signed Julian's replies back. Sweat rolled down her back, but her hands did not falter. By the time the meeting ended, the investor smiled, deeply impressed. The deal was sealed. Julian exhaled for the first time that morning. But for Ruth, the true victory was not the signed contract. It was the knowledge that for a brief moment, she had been more than a cleaner. She had been seen. Yet joy is fragile. Later that day, on her way down the stairs, Ruth overheard two managers whispering in the corridor. "Imagine a cleaner thinking she belongs in a boardroom," one sneered. "She'll go back to her mop. That's all she is." Their laughter sliced through her like glass. Her hands trembled, vision blurred. All the dignity she had felt collapsed into dust. That night, she sat in her tiny room in Ajagunal, staring at her brother Toby asleep on the mat. She remembered the leaky zinc roof of their childhood, her mother's worn wrapper, her father's absence, the days when Mary sold Puff Puff by the roadside just to keep her in school. She remembered the night her mother's chest tightened for the last time, whispering with her final breath, "Ruth, never stop believing you are more than what they call you." Tears burned Ruth's cheeks. She had believed for one day. But tonight, doubt roared louder than her mother's words. Then Toby stirred in his sleep, turned toward her, and signed with half-asleep fingers, "Love you." Her chest broke open. In that moment she vowed, "I will not die with a broom in my hand. I will rise." From then, Ruth worked her cleaning shifts by day and studied sign language by night. Michael, the young teacher she had once noticed at St. Dominic's Church, where he translated hymns for deaf children, became her quiet guide. He lent her books, corrected her fingers, encouraged her when fatigue nearly broke her spirit. By candlelight she practiced until her hands cramped. By morning she returned to the floors of Eco Towers, mop in hand, silent but determined. Julian, meanwhile, could not shake the image of Ruth's trembling hands in that first meeting, the courage, the dignity. Something about her haunted him. He began asking questions about the quiet cleaner who had saved his company from disaster. Months later, another critical meeting was scheduled. Once again, the official interpreter was late, stuck in Lagos traffic. Panic rippled through the room. Executives whispered in fear. But this time, Julian did not pace. He turned straight to Ruth. "Will you do it again?" he asked. Her hands no longer shook. She nodded with quiet confidence. And in that boardroom, her fingers moved like water, graceful, precise, commanding attention without needing sound. When the meeting ended, the investor applauded. Julian rose to his feet and turned to the entire staff. "This woman you all call a cleaner is more qualified than any of us realized. From today, Ruth is no longer a cleaner. She is our official interpreter." The boardroom fell silent. Some managers who had mocked her lowered their eyes in shame. Ruth stood tall, not with arrogance, but with a quiet dignity that needed no words. But Ruth's journey did not end there. With her new role came opportunities. She began volunteering at Michael's deaf school in Surulere, teaching children who reminded her of Toby. She saw joy light up their eyes when they understood her signs. And every evening when she returned home, Toby greeted her with laughter and signs of pride. Meanwhile, the very managers who once mocked her found themselves overlooked in promotions. Their gold chains and polished shoes meant nothing compared to the dignity Ruth carried in her hands. Michael stayed by her side, not in grand declarations, but in small acts of love, waiting outside her office with packed lunch, walking her home when the streets were unsafe, listening when she doubted herself. Slowly, Ruth began to realize that love is not loud, but steady, unnoticed, like the quiet strength of a hand held in the dark. One evening, under the orange glow of Surulere streetlights, Toby signed shyly to Ruth. "Is he your friend?" pointing at Michael. Ruth smiled, signing back, "Yes. Maybe more." Toby giggled, pulling Michael's hand, already accepting him as family. Not long after, Ruth returned to St. Dominic's, the same church where she once stood hidden with her torn hymn book. But this time she did not hide. She stood in front, beside Michael, introducing him to the priest who had once watched her sweep the aisles. There was no glittering wedding, no flashing cameras, no crowd of dignitaries. Only the simple prayer of a priest, the laughter of children, and the soft rhythm of hands signing, "Thank you." In the silence of that moment, Ruth finally felt whole. She had no riches, no crown, but she had dignity, she had love, and she had become more than what the world once named her. Because sometimes the strongest victories are not shouted in boardrooms or written in headlines. Sometimes they live quietly in the steady hands of a young woman who refused to be invisible.